Welcome back to The Curious Route, where we explore the mysteries that hide in the world's most isolated corners. Today, we're diving into something that will make you question what really lurks in the wilderness. We're talking about cryptid legends that exist in places so remote, so untouched by civilization, that anything could be out there. And trust me, by the end of this video, you'll understand why locals in these areas refuse to venture into certain territories after dark. So buckle up, because we're about to explore creatures that might just be more real than we'd like to admit. Let's start in the dense forests of the Pacific Northwest, where the legend of Bigfoot isn't just a campfire story. Deep in the Cascade Mountains, there are valleys that haven't seen human footprints in decades. Rangers and loggers who work in these areas have reported encounters that defy explanation. Massive bipedal figures standing over 8 feet tall, covered in dark hair, watching from the tree line. What makes these accounts particularly interesting is the consistency. We're not talking about vague descriptions here. Witnesses describe the same details: the overwhelming smell of rot and musk, the deep guttural sounds that echo through the canyons, and most disturbing, the feeling of being tracked for miles. The Congo Indian nation has stories about these beings that stretch back centuries, long before Bigfoot became a pop culture phenomenon. They call them the Stick Indians, and warn that encountering them brings misfortune. In 1995, a Forest Service employee reported finding footprints measuring 18 inches long in a remote section of the Gifford-Pinchot National Forest. What's fascinating is that the tracks appeared in an area accessible only by helicopter, or a 2-day hike through dangerous terrain. This wasn't some hoaxer looking for attention. This was someone who stumbled upon something they couldn't explain in a place where few humans ever venture. Now, let me take you across the world to the Himalayan mountains, where the legend of the Yeti has terrified and fascinated people for generations. The Sherpa people don't treat the Yeti as folklore. They treat it as a dangerous reality of their environment. At elevations above 15,000 feet, where oxygen is scarce and temperatures plummet to deadly lows, there are vast expanses of mountainside that remain unexplored. The terrain is so treacherous that even experienced climbers avoid certain routes. This is Yeti territory. In 1951, mountaineer Eric Shipton photographed a footprint in the snow on the Menlyn Glacier. The print measured 13 inches long and showed clear toes and a distinctive broad foot structure. Skeptics tried to explain it away as a bear print that had melted and refrozen, but experts in glacial conditions found this explanation insufficient. The print's depth and clarity suggested a creature of considerable weight had recently passed through an area where temperatures don't allow for significant melting. What's even more compelling are the accounts from high-altitude monasteries. Monks living in isolation report hearing strange calls in the night and finding evidence of something large rummaging through their storage areas. These aren't superstitious villagers. These are educated men who have spent years in these mountains and know the difference between known wildlife and something unexplained. Let's head to South America, specifically the Amazon rainforest, where indigenous tribes speak of the Mapinguari. This creature is described as a giant sloth-like being that stands upright and emits a horrific stench that can disorient victims. Here's where it gets really interesting. Scientists have discovered that giant ground sloths did exist in South America, but they supposedly went extinct around 10,000 years ago. Could a population have survived in the most remote parts of the Amazon, an area so vast that new species of conventional animals are still being discovered regularly? The Amazon contains regions that have never been properly surveyed. There are areas where the canopy is so thick that the forest floor remains in perpetual twilight, where tributaries lead to uncharted territories that would take weeks to reach on foot. In 1937, explorer Percy Fawcett wrote about hearing tales from natives of a creature they feared above all others, one that could not be killed by arrows and would attack without provocation. Fawcett himself disappeared in the Amazon, never to be seen again. Modern expeditions into the deepest parts of the rainforest have reported finding unusual tracks and hearing vocalizations that do not match any known species. Rangers in the Manu National Park, one of the most biodiverse places on Earth, have standing instructions not to investigate certain sounds heard deep in the forest. That should tell you something. The Congo Basin in Central Africa holds its own terrifying legend, Mokele-mbembe, described as a creature resembling a long-necked dinosaur living in the remote swamps and rivers. The Likuala swamp region is one of the most inaccessible places on Earth. It's a maze of waterways, thick vegetation, and areas that flood seasonally, making sustained exploration nearly impossible. Local tribes, including the Bangom and Bakota people, describe encounters with a creature that lives in deep river pools and attacks canoes that venture too close. They draw pictures that remarkably resemble sauropod dinosaurs, creatures they would have no way of knowing about through conventional means. Multiple expeditions have attempted to find evidence of Mokele-mbembe, and while conclusive proof remains elusive, the consistency of eyewitness accounts across different tribes who had no contact with each other is striking. In 1981, biologist Roy McCall led an expedition that collected testimony from dozens of witnesses who all described the same creature in the same location. More recently, drone technology has revealed that vast portions of the Congo Basin remain unmapped and unexplored. If any large unknown animal could exist undiscovered, this would be the place. Australia's outback presents us with the Yowie, the continent's answer to Bigfoot. The Australian interior contains some of the most remote and inhospitable terrain on the planet. The Great Victoria Desert, the Gibson Desert, and the vast stretches of bushland in Queensland provide millions of acres where a large, intelligent creature could remain hidden. Aboriginal Australians have stories about the Yowie that predate European colonization by thousands of years. These aren't borrowed legends or modern inventions. They're deeply embedded in the culture and spiritual beliefs of the indigenous population. Contemporary reports come from farmers, truck drivers, and campers who have no reason to fabricate stories. In the Blue Mountains region, there have been consistent reports of large bipedal figures spotted at dusk near water sources. What makes the Australian reports particularly credible is that many witnesses are reluctant to come forward due to fear of ridicule, yet the reports continue. In 2017, a group of hikers in the Watagans mountain range reported finding a series of large nests made from broken branches high on a ridgeline, structures too large and sophisticated to be made by any known Australian animal. Let's talk about why these legends persist in remote areas specifically. There's a pattern here that can't be ignored. Every inhabited continent has similar legends, and they all share common elements: large, bipedal, or quadrupedal creatures that avoid human contact, sightings in areas with limited accessibility, and long-standing indigenous accounts that predate modern cryptozoology. The remoteness itself is crucial. These aren't creatures being spotted in suburban parks or busy hiking trails. They're encountered in places where people rarely go, places where survival requires specialized knowledge and equipment. The question we have to ask is this: if millions of acres remain unexplored or rarely visited by humans, what else might be out there? We discover new species of conventional animals every year. In 2020 alone, scientists described over 19,000 new species. If we're still finding new insects, fish, and even mammals, is it really so far-fetched to think that larger, more elusive creatures might exist in the world's most isolated regions? The other factor is the reliability of indigenous knowledge. Western science is increasingly recognizing that indigenous peoples possess detailed understanding of their environments that often predates and surpasses conventional scientific study. When tribes from different continents, with no contact with each other, describe similar creatures in similar environments, that's worth paying attention to. These aren't fantasy stories told for entertainment. In many cases, these legends serve as warnings, teaching younger generations to respect the wilderness and avoid certain dangerous areas. There's practical wisdom embedded in these tales, even if the creatures themselves remain unproven. So, what do we make of all this? The truth is, we don't know. Science demands physical evidence, and cryptids remain frustratingly elusive. But absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence. especially when we're talking about regions that remain largely unexplored. The world is bigger and wilder than we sometimes remember. Our cities and roads and internet connections make us feel like we've conquered every corner of the planet. But we haven't. There are still places where humans are visitors, not rulers, where the old wild things might still roam. Whether these cryptids are undiscovered species, surviving prehistoric animals, or something else entirely, the legends persist because the wilderness persists. And maybe that's exactly how it should be. Maybe we need mysteries, places where we don't have all the answers, creatures that remind us we're not alone on this planet, and that some things are meant to remain unknown. If you found this journey into the unknown as fascinating as I did, drop a comment below. And tell me which cryptid legend intrigues you most, or if you've ever had an unexplained encounter of your own. I read every comment, and I'd love to hear your stories. And if you want to explore more mysteries with me, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss an adventure on the curious route. Until next time, stay curious, stay open-minded, and remember, the world still has secrets waiting to be discovered.